Hello and welcome back to Reporter's File. My name is Saeed Fourouza. First of all, a quick run through this week's program.
Police brutality in one of the largest countries in Europe. Beneath a veneer of democracy in Spain. The dangers of being a journalist in Afghanistan. And relaxing the body and mind.
One member of virtually every fifth Ukrainian family is behind bars. Ukrainian Guantanamo does not exist de jure, yet again, nor does fair justice, experts say. Human rights violations start with crossing the threshold of police departments. This report about the victims of police mistreatment in one of the largest countries in Europe.
Ukrainian Zoya Karpilenko barely nodded to the door and trudged inside. In this extremely small apartment in capital Kyiv, Zoya has been visited by plenty of journalists. She took a large folder out of the drawer and was again reminded of the day when the life of her son Sergei had changed.
Sergei was called in for questioning and was detained in the district police department. They accused him of stealing a cell phone. My son cannot have done this because he was home when the theft occurred. But nobody listened to me. After a few days, I got a phone call from the hospital. The doctors told me my son was in intensive care.
The doctors told Zoya that Sergei had been delivered from pretrial detention with various injuries. He had internal hemorrhage, lacerations to the lungs, a ruptured spleen, and a heavy effusion of blood.
When the doctors asked him what had happened to him, Sergei said he'd been beaten up by the police.
Human rights activists say that in Ukraine anyone can become a victim of torture. According to social service, each year over 600,000 Ukrainians are subjected to various forms of torture, beating or ill treatment. In particular, police brutality remains the core problem. Experts say that the main reasons behind torture in Ukraine are weak monitoring and the disregard for the right to defense. Having been deprived of legal assistance, the detainee is totally dependent on law enforcement officers. Human rights activists point to hundreds of incidents in which confessions were obtained illegally, even without a lawyer. Bogdan Khmelnytsky is the head of a social organization defending the rights of those imprisoned illegally.
Somebody knocked on my door, and for 4 years I was locked in a pre-detention center. Those who get there are not treated like a human. It starts with cells, with huge cockroaches, dark and cold, and ends with torture and police brutality. I was tortured for 10 days, but didn't own up to the crime.
Khmelnytsky says police are obliged to fulfill their monthly clear-up rate, so the confession is all they need. He stresses the adversarial principle of justice in Ukraine is not considered during criminal procedure. It means that the courts don't face the facts. They just take an indictment and based on that they issue the guilty verdict. The authorities deny frequent cases of ill treatment in pre-detention centers, yet some cases come into the open due to the outrageous cruelty of the police officers. The most notorious incident is the case of Igor Ndilo, a Ukrainian student killed in the downtown district police department in Ukrainian capital Kyiv. The Ndilo's case captured a lot of attention after hundreds of students staged a protest in front of the police department. Today it is kept under president's tight control. According to the Ukrainian constitution, police officers are supervised by the prosecutor's office. In March 2011, the General Prosecutor's Office held the first meeting on the ill treatment of the detainees. For the first time, such cases were not only admitted, but were highly publicized.
Since the beginning of the year, we have sent for trial 7 cases against police officers charged with abusing their power. In particular, the case against 2 police officers was handed to the court in August. They are accused of brutality and ill treatment of a detainee that they caused bodily injuries to.
However, the prosecutors claim that cases of simulations are not uncommon. The detainees often use the accusation of ill treatment to withhold evidence.
We have received 150 allegations of police brutality. All of them, except 5 incidents, appear to be baseless. This is commonplace for criminals to use the system this way and avoid punishment.
Meanwhile, human rights activists have unveiled other figures.
Since the beginning of the year, 20 detainees have died under torture in pre-detention centers. We note the deterioration of confinement conditions and treatment of detainees. The pre-detention centers are overcrowded. A lot of people have no access to medical help.
Experts say the authorities should establish independent national preventive mechanisms for the prevention of torture and ill treatment. This means both international and national bodies will have the mandate to visit detention houses and recommend that the government improve the conditions of individuals who've been deprived of their liberty. Experts stress that establishing the national preventive mechanism depends only on political will. For years after Ukraine ratified the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture, the authorities have made no headway. And the European Human Rights Court continues to receive more and more claims of torture and brutality at the hands of law enforcement forces from Ukraine. Daria Dieguts, Press TV, Kiev.